In an unexpected twist, straight out of a political thriller, top Trump administration officials, including high-ranking national security players, mistakenly leaked sensitive war plans in a private messaging group on Signal just before the United States launched military strikes against Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthis. The White House confirmed the slip-up on the 24th of March following a bombshell report by The Atlantic. The chat, which included a journalist, yes, really a journalist, sparked an uproar with Democratic lawmakers calling it a major breach of national security that must be investigated by US Congress. So here's how it all unfolded. The Atlantic's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, was unexpectedly invited to an encrypted Signal group on the 13th of March, dubbed the Houthi PC Small Group. It seems like an invite list you would expect for a closed-door national security meeting, not something you would casually stumble into. In the group, National Security Adviser Mike Waltz directed his deputy Alex Wong to set up a Tiger team to coordinate US action against the Houthis. While Goldberg was probably more used to chasing down stories than hunting down military secrets, the invite caught his attention. He reported that hours before President Trump ordered large-scale military strikes on the 15th of March, Hegseth, yes, the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, shared operational details in the chat, everything from targets and weapons to attack sequencing. The timing was less than ideal. The US had just begun its campaign of airstrikes against the Houthis, who had been targeting Red Sea shipping. Trump's warning to Iran, the Houthis' main backer, was loud and clear: stop supporting the group. But hours before the bombs started dropping, Hegseth was apparently texting tactical details to the wrong crowd. Goldberg didn't name the specific targets or weapons in his report, but he described the use of Signal for such sensitive exchanges as shockingly reckless. The group wasn't just made up of defense and intelligence officials. It seems like there was a whole crowd of VIPs involved. According to The Atlantic, the chat included accounts that seemed to belong to Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and several other senior NSC officials. Even Joe Kent, Trump's nominee for National Counterterrorism Center Director, who hadn't been Senate confirmed yet, apparently made an appearance in the thread. Who knew Signal was so social? Meanwhile, US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth denied the allegations and said that no one was texting in the group.
Your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic, and were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops. I've monitored it very closely from the beginning, and you see, we've been managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through. And when they did shoot back, it was purely defensively or at shacks in Yemen. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence, we will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis, which is exactly what we're doing as we speak from the beginning, overwhelmingly.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
President Trump, of course, had his own thoughts when reporters got wind of the leak.
Mr. President, your reaction to the story in The Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides had been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of the Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis? Right. Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective, I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it.
A White House official later clarified that an investigation was underway and Trump was briefed about the situation. Meanwhile, NSC spokesperson Brian Hughes weighed in, acknowledging that the chat thread appears to be authentic. He assured everyone that the ongoing success of the Houthi operation proved that no U.S. service members or national security interests were harmed. Still, the White House is reviewing how the journalist was added to the chat and how it all went off the rails. For more details and updates on the Signal leak scandal, stay tuned to the official YouTube channel of the Indian Express.